Welcome to part two of our riveting discussion on community development. This week is all about how community transformation creates lasting change. In our last episode, we barely scratched the surface, uncovering the profound impact that even small shifts in our communities can have on a broader world. But tonight, we're diving even deeper. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to create change that stands the test of time? How can we move beyond temporary fixes and foster transformation that echo through generations? In this episode, our panel will explore the core principles that drive lasting change, sharing real life stories, proven strategies, and powerful insights that will challenge the way that you think about your role in your community. Whether you're passionate about making a difference or just curious about what it takes to turn vision into reality, this conversation is for you. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and equipped to take action that leaves a lasting legacy. So grab your notepad, settle in, and prepare to engage with ideas that could change not just your community, but your life. So that being said, let's get started. Listen, I know that when we got started last time, we kind of, peeled the layers back between everybody that's here. But again, like we all seen, we welcome everybody's perspective. So we got a lot of questions. Those questions not only added value to the conversation, but those questions were value overall. So, as always, remember this is a place where everybody's a subject matter expert of their own perspective. So, ask questions, give your insights in the chat, and that just kind of goes along with this particular conversation or any conversation we have. That's what we do here. Um, Brother Martin, you've been on a little hiatus. Welcome back. It's always good to have you with us. These brothers, I kind of ran them through the gambit last week by asking them a series of questions, putting them on the spot. And I kind of want to afford you the opportunity to catch up because one of the first things that we started off with is like getting perspectives as it pertains to the landscape of our community. So, from your perspective, Uncle Junior, how do you perceive the current landscape of our community and why?
How much time do I have?
You got all the time you need, brother.
Um, the reason why I asked is because I'm hoping it don't take too long, but like you said, I want to catch up. So when I first look at the word landscape, I have, one of my hobbies is I enjoy photography, so I take pictures sometimes. And one of the things I look at when I look at landscape, if you look at a landscape, it's a bunch of different things. You may have land, you may have trees, you may have water, you may have a certain amount of lighting, clouds, all of these different things can be wrapped up into a landscape. So when I'm looking at the current landscape of our community, I see it as a lot of different things, right? So obviously we can't go through every single thing in the community. So I'm going to highlight three of them: family, information, and resources. So the first one is family. Who or what is setting the tone or being the example for the family in the community? I think that we look on social media, we can see certain things. We look on TV, we can see certain things. And it is what it is. So if we look at our perception of what it's like, my perception of what it is in the when it comes to family, I see a lot of things that are not right. And I don't see a lot of examples of what right looks like. Um, on to information. Everybody has one of these nowadays. So it's not that there is a lack of information. I think the problem or the issue is where to look for the information or what to look up. I think you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what you should sometimes or what you shouldn't look up. And also when it comes to information, what information is being pumped through these devices that you spend a lot of time on. That's very important too. I see a lot of people who are not doing a lot with their life, spending a lot of time on these. Now, the information is in here, But what you choose to do with this device when you have it is helps determine part of the landscape of our community, what we're looking at. Now, on to the resources portion. There is a lot of resources that come out of our community that go into other communities. We control a lot of money. However, comma, what are we doing with the money? Who are we looking at for the examples of what we should be doing with our money, not just money, but our resources, because our resources come in different ways, right? Roland's good with money, Coach is good with his hands, he can build stuff, Twami might be good with gardening, and I may be good with doing something else. But all of these different things, maybe mechanics. So now we have all of these resources that we can share, but what are we doing with them? What are we doing with the money that comes into our community? you know so I think that all of these things, when it comes to family, when it comes to information and comes to resources, I think that the current landscape of our community overall is that we could stand to grow in all of these areas. I'm done.
That was good. That was very thorough, gentlemen. What are your thoughts or responses to what Unc just said?
Well, I agree for the most part with what he was saying because we don't necessarily pool our resources together. And if we do, like I said last week, the military is a great example of what a community should be and how they use everything that you can want on the outside. You have your grocery store, car washes, and everything that you need outside, they have inside. And I've also know when Unc was just talking, I was thinking you have certain larger churches who do the same thing. They will network within. They have their own, like they have a system, a little networks working system of mechanics, networking system of cooks, builders, and so forth. So when you use them, because they're looking at like they gonna bring and pay money back into the community. They paying it back into the community, and so we will support them. And that's just a microcosm of how we should be overall.
I agree, man. I tell you, I love having everybody's perspective when we have conversations like this because we all come from different places, have different experiences, and we see different avenues of how this thing comes together. And so I love what you brought up, and for me, I kind of reiterate a little bit back with last week. I said half of our problem is, and I think I said I don't know if we have vision, you know, and so because there's no vision or no visionary, it seems like we all flying by our wings trying to catch on to somebody else's vision, trying, you know, so dire for other people to accept us in different senses, and instead of building what we have internally. So Own brought up a good point that we probably get into later, but there's so much money that filters out of our community that so much can be done with, you know, and we still like the reality is there's no reason why we should be pushing out 14. They say we're 14% of the population, but we're pushing out half of the consumer's money being spent in the market. You know, that's a pretty big margin to really think about. So we can we can we can build together if we learn how to have vision together and how to work together. So I love it.
But here's my rebuttal to what you just said. We go back just pretty much one or two generations. Like, we had businesses, we had a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? I watched, Dr. Claude Anderson. He was talking about, like, I think his family owned like the biggest, bus company like in the South, the biggest black owned bus company or something like that. And it's like Well, at some point, there were visionaries and people in the community had all of these businesses, doctors, lawyers. We had all of these businesses. So I don't believe that it's due to the lack of vision, but I don't know what it is. I don't know why at some point in time we had all of these things, it seems like, and it seems like now it's like we don't. And I don't understand the disconnect. And it's not a, I guess I want to say it's more so adding to what you're saying and just, kind of looking at it from my perspective. Because like we
and
had,
that's
like I found out that we had people, my uncles, my great uncles and them, like they had businesses and stuff like this. I didn't even know about.
yeah, and that's where we get to the concept of the Black Wall Street, right? And I think I said last week when I was studying this in history, I found out that there were hundreds of communities that were thriving that were destroyed during the same time frame, right? And I don't think that killed the vision, right? Sometimes you break a buck hard enough, sometimes they lose their desire to fight back, right? But I don't think that did it. And I can give my theory why I think you know it all disconnected for us, but I don't want to ruffle no feathers yet. I'm gonna wait for questions now. but
Yeah.
I don't think that changes the scope. I think we lost vision of togetherness. Like we go, we send our kids to go make money, and I said this last week, and to take that money away from our community. Let's go play basketball because you can buy mommy and daddy a house, and that's honorable. But how many of us are teaching our kids to go become a doctor and come back, have black doctors in our community, to go be lawyers and bring black lawyers into our community? We teach them to go and work for these major corporations and make big monies and have a big name, but it doesn't affect our community. We're the only community that does that in large.
So let's bring it back for a second here because I know we kind of we got real deep into this last week. But before we move any further, let's kind of like paint the picture of what community looks like. Because I know for a fact that some people say, well, my community is not necessarily people I live around, whatever that look like. So, gentlemen, in your opinion, your thoughts, what is a community?
I think on the base level, a community is just a group of people. Um, I think there are different communities, and I think you can be part of multiple communities. This right here, the Empowering Perspective podcast, is a community. The military is a community. So I think that, first of all, there are different types of communities, and you can be involved or connected to different communities. But I think a lot of times when we use it, especially as Black folk, we use it as Black people, and we usually encompass all Black people. And the reality of it is everybody who's Black is not part of the community. So um I'll leave it at that. I'll put a pin in right there.
No, sir. You just dropped the bomb just now. And try to walk off stage. That last little piece you just said. Can you just kind of give us a little bit more? You ain't got to go into great detail.
Mhm.
But what did you mean when you said that? And I might be paraphrasing. If I got it wrong, I got it wrong. And I'm just saying what I said. Just because you're Black don't necessarily mean you're part of the community.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because there are people who are Black, but they act a certain way, so they say, well, you're not part of the community. Or if you date outside of your race, you're not part of the community, or you don't love yourself. You know what I mean? So these people sometimes are not considered part of the community because they choose to have preferences that are not within agreement with certain people in the community. So like for me, my wife is Native American. So some people think that I hate myself or something like that because I chose to not marry a Black woman. And they think that I may not be able to speak on Black issues because I'm married outside of my race. So, and I get it and I understand, and that's their perspective. So that's why I say that, everybody who's Black is not necessarily part of the community.
I like it. I like it.
Light-skinned people. Psh. I'm just saying, though, that's something that if you're biracial, sometimes you're not considered part of the community.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can run into small-minded people who look at certain things and we allow that to be the basis of our community. If you're looking at, like he spoke of, the Black community, and when you're looking at community, for me, in order to have community, you have to have a like mind and seeking like goals and same guidelines. So if we have the same guidelines, when you, like you say, your wife is Native American, and because of my studies, and when I study the Native lineage, I study it, and I find that the Native and the, as we consider and call them, Black, are interrelated. So I don't separate those as, oh, you married outside your race. Now where you just came from, that's totally different. But I look at, you got to have like-minded goals and guidelines in order to be community. Because if you don't, then you just people living in the same area or in the same vicinity.
I agree with what everybody said. The like-mindedness is definitely a major part. I believe that proximity should play a role, but it no longer does, by consequence. But I think a part of it is too is a part of it is the story, right? Because when Oak first made that statement, I was thinking more so of people who are either detriment to the community, not necessarily like dating outside the race and stuff like that, but chose not to associate with the culture or with the people. I don't even like to say the culture because the culture can go any direction depending on the way the wind blows. But to associate with with like with us folk, because that skin folk ain't always kin folk thing, but and there's some whose desires were to do better, so they didn't have to associate and live around with skin folk, and that's just So I was thinking about that, but I think the story plays a major role because many of us, even though from different places, it's so funny. Like me and Roland would talk a lot. He's from Detroit, I'm from New York. And a lot of times I feel like I could see his story when he's telling it in the Bronx because I've seen the similar story, the similarities to the background or to the experience of 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 black people, or even four black men here talking, one from Georgia, Carolina, you know, uh, uh, Detroit, New York, but there are experiences that we experience as black men in the world, and so that in itself to me makes us some sort of a community. It may not be the like-minded folk that get together and sit on the podcast and talk and share ideas, but we'll end up in the military in the smoke pit together sharing stories because we have similar experiences that sound or look different because of where we come from. So I think all of that is a role that plays in with
Yeah, I'm gonna go back because I like the plain and simple version, right? It's Unc, I'm stealing your thunder. A bunch of people together that has a common shared vision. Like mindset is great, but at the end of the day, having a like mindset and the same vision is not the same thing. We can think alike, but we probably won't even be alike. We can be thinking and believing the same thing, but then this person is out there on their own desert island, doing their own thing. Now, that doesn't make them a part of the community. That just means that we think alike. But if we have a shared vision, a common goal, and things of that nature, then I think in my mind that creates a community because it gives everybody within that community something common to work towards, which to me, creates a lot of the problem that we see, because for whatever reason, we don't have a shared vision. We can say it, and it takes something tragic to happen before a shared vision brings us together. And I give you a perfect example. You go back over the past couple of years, whenever there was something detrimental that actually happened, when you see a whole bunch of people getting in the street with picket signs that saying, screaming a person's name, what I'm saying? So that's the shared vision. That's what happens when a community comes together under a shared vision. But other than that, you're just a gang of dudes walking around claiming you're in a community, and you're not. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Also, go back and look at the work that you're doing. Like, I'm a firm believer that if you really want to understand what you really and truly do believe, look at what you're doing. What you're doing is revelation of what you believe into the depth of what you believe. So to claim community and do nothing for the community is evidence that you're just claiming community, but you're not part of the community. So when you look around the entire landscape, the landscape, like I said last week, is rocky. It's not fertile, because at the end of the day, I'm going back to what Gaddy said, skin folk ain't always kinfolk. And so just because we look alike, just because we may dress alike or even talk alike, but we are two totally different people doing two totally different things, claiming we're doing the same thing. But to be completely transparent, we may not even care about each other. We're just making it look that way being the public eye. And that's just my perception as it pertains to this. Go ahead, bro.
I love it because, and that's where I want to go, because you can see that in the church community, because you can go out here on any of these blocks, and on each block you have on four of the corners various churches. They all say they're in the Christian community, but none of them congregate together. None of them have the same goals as to how we can fix this. It's like when you can look back when MLK, when when they were organizing marches, he was the face of it, but he had people with him that were visionaries also, that say, okay, I'm bringing my people, you bring your people, and we all bring our people because we have one common goal to see us do better. And that's not what we have. We don't have that. We have a bunch of people saying, I got the answer over here, I got an answer over there. And so now everybody's doing their own thing. Nobody wants to fall under subjection to another, or give the limelight to somebody who may be more suited for the position, because they want it all. And that's our problem. We want to be hey, I got to be the big guy. You can be the little you, but I'm going to be the big guy if this thing going to work. And that's our problem. One of our problems.
And I always love when we had this conversation. I always love when people to bring up the MLK thing, because people forget these are older pastors. To make your point, that came down to a 22-year-old brand new seminarian pastor and said, "You have pretty much said you got the juice. There's something you got something that we need to push out this movement, this community forward." And they all rallied behind him. And just to think, all of us that live just about four more decades, and how many of us are willing to go find a 22-year-old and say, we're going to jump behind you and we want to follow you to make us better. That's hard. That is a hard thing in our community today, because I think everybody's striving either to make it out of the community, or they're striving to be the next big thing. No one's striving to make it all better. And that the goal was different. So that's just to push that point. I agree.
I had a question. Who gets to put me in a community, and who gets to determine who's part of that community? Because I hear people say that, hey, you're like, if Roland said, hey, you are part of the Black community. Is it okay for Roland to automatically put me in a category of being in the Black community just because my skin color may look like him? Because I think we do that a lot. And I'm asking, honestly, I'm not saying to Roland, I'm just using this as an example. But is that fair, or is that okay for other people to automatically assume that that person or someone is part of their community?
I think the assumption comes with likeness. When you have a likeness with someone, whether it be the color of your skin, it's like if I were to go to Panama, if I were to go to Cuba, if I were to go to Puerto Rico or Haiti or any of those countries, before I spoke, they wouldn't know if I were of them. They would automatically think, oh, that's like, I don't know how many times I was around certain people and they just start speaking another language. I'm like, I ain't finished my Bible episodes yet. But you are automatically thought to be in certain communities until you determine or you make up your mind or you do something to negate that being your stance. So people will automatically, like people see me with this. I don't know how many times, oh, you a Muslim? No. Just simply because of the head wrap. They automatically go think it because of how we're trained, how we learn. And you know, I understand that. It doesn't throw me off. And so when it comes to somebody put you in a community, I think people will assume until they have knowledge.
I really think that question it's a question. I'll tell you that because it's a real conversation that we have that I really think needs to be pushed aside in a sense, because we're not really having that conversation from a headspace of intellect. It's from a I feel kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like because you brought it up earlier. You know, and it's just being honest, right? Black men will run black women out of the community because they're married to white men. Black women will run black men out of the community because he's married to a white woman or whatever have you. Right? So it's a feelings thing. You didn't marry something that looked like me, you're not black. You didn't date somebody that looked like me, you're not black. The black experience looks different depending on who's experiencing it. You know, there's, like I said earlier, we have some similarities in our stories, right? If we all share stories, there's some things that will sound familiar, but it don't look the same for everybody, right? So it even though there's similarities, there are major differences because the way they do it in Washington is different than the way they. That's why we have hip hop has 13 different sounds depending on who's rapping. If they're from Texas, it sounds different. If they're from Cali, it sounds different. New York, it sounds different. Georgia, it sounds different. Because the experience, it's the same culture, but it looks different depending on who's wearing it. And so when we have this conversation of who belongs in the community and all this, like it's hard for me to really have that conversation because I can tell you that there's some people that may not have had the same struggle in coming up than we did, that some of us did. Does that take them out of the community? Not necessarily. Does that put them in the community? Not necessarily. Once we get past, I get the like-minded and the like vision, but when we're talking about making things better, then now that the conversation comes different. You might be a part of the community, but if you didn't come from a place that you had to make things better, a lot of people probably won't respect the input, right? Because you don't know where I came from. You didn't come from where I come from. You didn't, you know. So those conversations I had, but I think they're all emotion driven. So I said a lot of this.
Yeah, and for people who think like that, they're no different than the people who don't respect where you came from, right? When we start getting down to this emotionally based living concept, I have to hit the freeze button right there. Just because Tyrone decided he wanted to marry Rebecca, that did not run Tamika out the neighborhood. Tamika left the neighborhood because Tamika chose to leave the neighborhood. That's the answer. It's going to always be the answer. And that's kind of like the thing that we were talking about last week. Like emotions have clouded judgment and have gotten to the point to where we ignore facts. And as long as I get to create the facts as I want to and tie them around my emotions, then I hold you hostage to how I feel. Therefore, I now get to blame you for any and everything I can conjure up in my little mind and say, that's how I feel. And you can't tell me anything different. To your question, who gets determined that you're in the community? You do. I just said that. Your behavior does, right? It ain't your word, it ain't your lip service. It sounds good, right, to get you in the door. But once your behavior don't line up with what you see, what you're saying, and people start viewing you as unauthentic, the community itself moves away from you. You'll still be standing there saying, hey, and I'm part of the community, and you're over here, and the community is down the street because they realize that all you do is talk about a thing, but you have not done anything that lines up with what you said. So I think that is going to always be the answer. We may want a person in the community, but at the end of the day, their behavior will reveal what they actually believe. And therefore, when that shows up, believe it because that's who they are. And that's their truth. And you know how I feel about that phrase. But I hope we answered your question, bro. I think that was a great question.
Yeah.
Listen, oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, as we get ready to dive into these questions in the chats, number one, keep them coming. We love them, we appreciate them. But wherever you are, go ahead and smash the like button. Go ahead and share it with some other people. That way we can get some other people involved in this conversation. Because as you're seeing, I mean, again, good, bad, or indifferent, I don't think we're holding anything back. So the first question from the chat is as follows. Do you think that during the pandemic, people got unmotivated and refused to go back to the norm?
I think you're always going to have some people to do this, and then I think there's a totally different perspective too. I think what happened for a lot of people is they saw a bunch of lies on social media. They saw these 1% of people doing extremely well, and they thought that, hey, this is something that's very achievable. And going out there and trying things, which is nothing wrong with, but I think a lot of people were misinformed. I do think that there is a section of people who got unmotivated because they started getting some checks coming in, and they were getting paid some money to not do anything, and they thought that maybe that lifestyle was sustainable. So I do think there is definitely some people who fall in this category, but I also think there are a lot of people who fall into the totally opposite side of that. Like for me, I got super motivated, and a lot of things came together for me during the pandemic. So
I think I think people refuse to go back to the norm for a while after the pandemic, but I don't know if it was motivation or lack of motivation. Um, kind of like I heard different stories. I know a lot of people who were ready. A lot of parents, a lot of single parents are ready to get back to the norm because they wanted to get them kids back into school, right? Because parenting became hard when they had to do it all day. Um, and then and then you had those who did well in stuff like investing or businesses or something like they got into some stuff because they had more time and they had some checks, you know, and so they didn't go back to the norm after the pandemic. They started following different paths, and so some people benefited from it. And I do agree that there were some who didn't want to go back to the norm because it for some people it felt good not to be around people. For some people it felt good not to go to work and get paid, but them checks had to stop, you know, and just some some people just became so fearful of the outdoors that they got I don't want yeah, I would say some form of like a PTSD because they probably knew someone who got sick, who went outside, got sick, someone who probably passed away because of it, and it probably shocked them and made them afraid of the outdoors. So that's what I think.
Unmotivated and refused to go back to the norm. I think some people were motivated during that time frame because they saw that the norm was trash. They saw that how the government treated them was trash. The medical system was trash. They saw that every system that they thought helped them rise was used to suppress them, was used to manipulate them. Like your time. Oh, you trying to tell me I got to go to work because you say so for $7 an hour, and I can sit here and make some money? So my time became more valuable to me. I became more valuable. Time with my family became more valuable to me. And I think some people realize that I don't have to do things as they've always been done in order for me to move forward. I don't have to do these things. So people grew a level of importance with certain things that made it to where what used to be, I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to sit in church 7 hours and come back for night service. I don't have to do that because you want me here. Because before that, people were doing it. Hey, it is what it is. And that whole that'll-do attitude stunts us from changing, stunts us from growing. And I think a lot of people grew in their mentality and their mindset, as well as monetarily, because I know I was investing. I was like, okay, let me pick a little of this and let me pick a little of that. And I was gaining when it came to investing. So that brought, I'm reading, I'm gaining there, I'm investing, I'm gaining there. So some people grew, some people chose not to, I'm sorry. And you see the evidence afterwards.
But you ain't got no job, Tommy. I'm just saying, it didn't matter to you. Listen, the long and short of it is, I think there's about 5 different answers to this question. Do you think during the pandemic people got unmotivated and refused to go back to work? Yep, they got unmotivated. That's 1. They refused to go back to work. That's 2. They realized they could work from home. That's 3. They realized they didn't want to work no more. That's 4. It's like because of the pandemic, you realize a lot of things. So it's a number of things that the pandemic introduced to us. I think all these brothers, everything they said is accurate, but then I think there's a lot more that goes along with it. And I think it was all fear based because everybody kept watching CNN and looking at the number of deaths, but no one ever showed how many people went into the hospital and came out alive. Just saying. So great question. I thank you for asking that. Let's move on, skip that one, go to the next one. Is there a difference between an online community and a regular community? Example, we are part of an online community. So what are examples that we can offer or do with our community? And I wanted to do it in that order because a lot of these online communities started popping up during the pandemic. So that's why we went that way from the pandemic into the online community. So gentlemen, what say ye?
Yes. We pick and choose which online communities we get in. Now, if you're talking a community that you live in, your neighborhood, that's a totally different thing because I don't even associate with none of these people around here. I don't. Tawami lives in another community we associate and other people, but like on my block in my neighborhood, I don't know none of these folks. So we choose those things. And so it's kind of similar in that aspect, but the online community is one where if I don't like something going on in this room, I can back out. Nobody got to really see me. I can back out because it's like here, it's 4 talking heads. And if you don't like what the talking heads are saying, you can back out and go somewhere else and jumping into this room and that room. And that's another thing that's wrong with the online communities because people will bounce from here to there and they're getting food off of everybody's table. And I was always told if you eat from everybody's table, you're going to get sick because you're learning this and then this person says the opposite of what they said. And you're taking all this in, you're never doing the studies for yourself. You're never reading and learning for yourself. So now your community, as you consider it, now you have a disgruntled feeling about this one over here because they're not saying what that one over there saying. So it's one of those things where it's different yet the same.
Yes, there is a difference. There are also, like Roland said, a bunch of similarities as well. You know, she asked, what are some examples that we can offer within our community? I would tell you like this. I'm in a bunch of different online communities too, a bunch of different groups and stuff. I actually run my own group. And I'm in a group called Black Married Men Only. And it is some game been put out in some of these groups, right? It's dudes on there talking about it. Dudes may ask questions about, hey, what was the best date you and your wife ever went on? And it's dudes in there giving game that we can take back to our community, which might be me and my wife, right? Or we may have a conversation, us four right here after the show, and we may share information about certain things like this. So I do think that there can be a positive aspect of these online communities right now. All four of us here on this panel, and to include the chat and everybody's watching on these different platforms right now, this is an online community. There's information that has been shared and learned every single Friday on this show, and we can take this information and we can bring it to our communities and we can share it about, and then we can help other people grow. That's what it's about.
Man, there is a lot that technology has changed that I think we realize is depth, and we actually forced it to grow some more during the pandemic. So I love, Coach, that you chose to put those in order like that, because Zoom had to upgrade how it operated. You know, StreamYard became more popular. These things started and people started learning how to operate them better. Right? That's how more communities started popping up, because we needed something to do. You know, that's why we started having the verses uh, between our favorite hip hop artists from our eras. You know, started going at it, and it was things that excited us. And so you have that level of community because we come together. You know, there's four talking heads, but there's a whole community in the chat room. You know, that that is feeding us, and that is encouraging us. That's encouraging each other. If you read the chat during the live, some of them are having conversations while listening to us, helping each other in aspects of things we're talking about. Right? So it exists. But there are some differences as well, because I think there's a level of personability that you have to make an effort to get. Like, if someone asks me randomly without me thinking, "Hey, you ever met Dwayne Dwyer?" I'm like, "Yeah, I met him." Then I'm gonna stop and think, but like, I ain't never seen that brother. But we on every Friday. We study the word together on Zoom every Shabbat. You know, we on live together every Sunday. And and if I don't think about it, I feel like I met the brother. You know, so with that, like, that's that effort that has to be in, so we can get that that personal interaction that is often missed online. You know, so you have that, but I also and I said it earlier. I feel like there is a value in proximity, because yes, I live in a different community. Me and Roland is in the same community here online, but I can go drive 10 to 15 minutes and get to my brother if I need someone to talk to for real in person. You know, and vice versa. You know, so that plays a role, because sometimes I just don't want to talk on the phone. I don't want to hold my hot phone to my head and sweat my ear through the phone and get water damage, because I want to tell them about what's going on. You know, sometimes I want to say, bro, let's light the cigar and let's go. He said, don't put them AirPods up. But you know what I'm saying, that I like it. It's there, and it gives us more opportunity to meet more people. But I still like talking to people face to face.
So is there a difference? Yes. Are there similarities? Yes. I think the similarities will greatly outweigh the differences. Just like everything else, I think, and I know this is not what you're asking. I'm just talking about it in this perspective for a particular reason. I think just like everything else, we pay more attention to the differences than we do the similarities. the principles of community development are the same. They will always be the same because that's what principles are. Principles work wherever you put them. So when you start looking at community development, online community development works just as well as it does out in the, in your own neighborhood. Just like you can have, and I'm just going to be transparent. I'm sorry, y'all know how I do. I love everybody, but I just want to be honest. Just like you got sorry people in the community, you got sorry people online. They ain't gonna do nothing in the neighborhood. They ain't gonna do nothing in the community that they join. They just become wallflowers. So, but on the other side of that, just like you got great people in the community who will bend over backwards and help anybody, it's the exact same way online. So I think that is a great example. And I think when you look at what are examples that we can offer or do with our community? Well, I would say first and foremost, do more than what is being done now. Listen. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna be transparent. A majority of the people in our community aren't doing a lot. They're just existing in space. So, like, do more. I think that's really what it is because the principles mandate that we do more, regardless of wherever we are. Like every little bit counts. If everybody does a little bit, it becomes a lot. But what ends up happening is when a majority of people don't do anything, then one person does a lot. So that being said, and I'm just telling the truth. You have no idea how many hours I spent behind this computer just prepping for this show, working with Unc, prepping for Tuesday night. And me and Unc, I will say on Tuesday nights, we bounce back and forth. So some nights he do it, some nights I do it. When we do a recording, some nights I edit the video, some shows he edit the video, right? So that's just what the truth looks like. Even when you start looking at Saturday morning conversation, even when you start looking at Sunday morning TikToks, and we vacillate between the three of us when it comes down to what we do on Sunday mornings. Now it's going to be a fourth because Lisa is now being plugged into that as well. So that's kind of like that's what we're talking about. Like if everybody do a little bit, then a lot gets accomplished. Same thing in the neighborhood. If you got one little person out there, one little faithful grandma who love her community and she gets out there and pick up trash, I think every man in that community need a swift kick in the rear end. Just as soon as you see her go out there, you should be jumping across tables to get outside to help. And that's kind of like what community looks like. So I hope we answered your question. Great question. I think we got time for one more. Then we really need to dive into some community development stuff. What's the next question? And if we identify by behavior and works that don't, should that person be exiled? Should that person be exiled from the community to protect the whole of the community? I actually know where this question comes from, to be honest with you. But go ahead. What do you guys' thoughts?
Give them the deuces. If they don't want to come on board, then you got to cut the fat. They said part of the community was like vision. So if that person's not part of the vision, they can't be part of the community. That's just what I learned tonight.
I think that's one of those situations where first and foremost you bring something to someone's attention first, and if you go to your brother, you go to your sister, you bring it up, you say, "Hey, you're not cutting the mustard," or "This is what we see." Because sometimes you could be seeing things from your perspective or your point of view, but you don't necessarily know what that person is going through, what that person is doing, because they may be putting on a facade to just get along, just to get by. So for you to excommunicate someone without doing your due diligence and finding out what's going on, you could do more damage than good. So that's one of those, find out what's going on first before you just say, "Hey, I'm kicking this person to the curb."
When I was in the church, I noticed we had a bad habit in church of elevating people because they wore suits good, because they paid a very generous tithe. They were at every event. They sung good on the middle chorus, or they were boisterous or what have you. And so we took them and we elevated them. And when they got there, we ostracized them because they didn't fit in where they were. But we elevated them. I think a lot of times when we're dealing with a lot of people in our community who behaviors or that are even seem like they're trying to attach themselves to our community, I think that we mess up in two ways. One, we try to put people in position because how they used to say, "Oh, Raymond gonna be a preacher," and look at him. Either he trying to holler, hoop like his daddy. He trying to hoop like the pastor. He too. He just making the noise you hear. Because he saw Mike, and the only person he sees with a mic is the preacher, so he's emulating. But we raised him to be some sort of a preacher or leader, and that's not what he was built to be. That's not who he is. And I'm just using preacher for an example, but we have people that are like that, and then we have people who have never been a part of our community until it became beneficial, and then all of a sudden they identify, and we allow them to be lifted up in our community. So we have variables of things that take place, and so for me, it's not always a kick them out. Maybe we just need to bring them off that horse. Maybe your place in this community is not up there speaking. It's not out there teaching. Maybe it's not you're not supposed to be, going into battle. You can't fight. So maybe you shouldn't be fighting for I'm just saying. It's just so I'm with Roland is that we have to investigate what's going on, and then we make decisions like that with time.
It's a lot of work, bro. It's a lot of work. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm at the stage in my life I'm not gonna show to anybody else's trauma. So if you got something going on with you, if you ain't man enough to come to me and tell me what it is, I'm not gonna come hunt you down and ask the question, do you have trauma going on in your life? Now, if I see something, I will ask, but I'm not just going to automatically assume that there's something going on. Because if that's the case, I'm gonna spend a majority of my day talking to people just because they didn't pick up the trash that walked past, just because they didn't say thank you when I held the door open. Is there something wrong? No, I'm not doing that. So if at the end of the day, I'm on Team Garfield with that one. Look, if they're not cutting the mustard, it becomes a dead weight that's in your boat that you're rowing, and it's slowing you down. Pick up an oar and row. It's not that difficult. We can make up all the excuses for other people all they want to, but that makes us no different than everybody else that are making excuses about why they can't do something. Stop making excuses and do. That's all it is. And again, this isn't targeting you or either one of you. I'm just saying I'm not doing it. I think that's one of the reasons why we are where we are right now, because we automatically assume something negative is happening with a person when all they got to do is just open their mouth and say something. Like I seen the TikTok, I thought was just hilarious. Apparently the young lady was having, issues, and it's a skit, of course, but she was something was wrong with her, and the husband said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Nothing." And then he asked again, like, "What's wrong?" She said, "Nothing." He said, "Okay, going to work." And so she got mad because he didn't ask the third time. And she said she was going to tell him on the third time. Like, what kind of hokey pokey childish games are we playing? I don't have time for that. I'm too old for that. So just my thoughts.
I'm with you there, Dwayne. But I look at it like, if I'm saying, okay, we talking cutting the person loose right now. We ain't talking about just asking them a question, because you ask them a question, they're gonna tell you 9 times out of 9, they're gonna tell you some bull. So especially if it's personal in nature. But you say, dude, this is serious business. I'm looking at moving here, and you're holding me back. So now I got to let them know the severity of this conversation ain't how you see it, because I'm cutting you loose. If you tell me you just, hey, whatever. Okay, we're going and going to do whatever over there. We moving forward. I'm with you there. But if it's something to where that person can't, I think everybody has some type of everybody's salvageable.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
when you look at whether or not they are cutting the mustard, you got to let them know, dude, you ain't cutting the mustard. If this persists, we gonna see you on the other side of the street. You will no longer be with us. And that's the honest truth. And as a friend, as a brother, whomever, they should be able to accept that. And if they don't, they're being selfish. Because like in this thing, I say don't take it personal, but make it personal.
Right.
So I ain't in my feelings about it. I can't get in my feelings, but I got to make it personal. And that's why I got to cut you loose,
So
because
do
it's
you?
personal to me that you're not bringing up the slack. It's personal to me you're not doing your part. And so it becomes personal. I'm not taking it personal. I'm not in my feelings.
Right.
Making it personal, because when I make it personal, I'm trying to move it forward. You're taking it personal. You're going to hold us back.
Right. So do you believe that they know they're not doing nothing?
Yes. Yes.
I think that's always the answer. I think everybody already know what they are and are not doing, what value they're bringing to the whole, not just themselves. And 9 times out of 10, when someone is not bringing value to the whole, they're only looking to extract value, not add value. And for an extractor that's not looking to add, they become what we call a leech. And at some point, you got to recognize the leech, talk to the leech, and say, "Hey, I need you or not. Help me to understand which one we're gonna do." So that's just my takes on it. Listen, time is getting away from us again, man. I greatly appreciate everybody's respect. Now we gotta go all the way down to building strong, building strong, inclusive leaderships. Um, I greatly appreciate every person who is adding value to this conversation, even in the chats. I see what you guys are doing. Greatly appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. By all means, we will definitely get to them if possible. But again, we value all that you're doing. Make sure you hit the like button, regardless of what platform you own, because the platform, they love algorithms that kind of help us to get up in the search feature as it comes along as well. So, gentlemen, what qualities do you believe define effective community leaders, and why is inclusive leadership particularly important in today's diverse communities?
I'll start with the first part of this question, and then kind of maybe come back to the second part. Qualities. I think it was mentioned earlier, the word vision. I think that a leader have to have a vision. I think that that person needs to be able to inspire people. I think that person needs to be of good character. Um, so I think just on the surface, I think those are just some of the qualities that an effective community leader need to have. Also, the ability to effectively communicate and honest, So I'm gonna stop right there because that's all I got, and then I'll come back around probably and bounce back to the second part of it.
I'm gonna have to go for Gaddy. Take all of them. I think integrity. You got to have integrity, because if you don't have integrity, what the heck I'm following you for? I can't trust you. I can't trust where you're going. So you got to have integrity, and like Uncle saying, you got to be able to communicate with people, not how you think you supposed to communicate with them, but you got to be an active listener and learn how they communicate, because everybody doesn't communicate the same. So you got to be able to flip flop. You got to be able to wear multiple hats, and you got to have a growth mindset. You got to be willing to grow. You got to, okay, well, this how we done it back in 1982, and it worked. This ain't 1982. So you got to have a growth mindset so that we can move forward, so that and while you're listening to people, realize that people are valuable as well. People's inputs are valuable as well. So it's not a me attitude, it's a we attitude.
For the record, I only got one, so mind your business. Maybe two. I'm not sure really how many. They're probably just gonna flow. But um, I think most importantly, um, my major quality is understanding of the word and the ways of the Father. I think we've had enough of lawless leaders trying to lead our community. And when I mean lawless, I mean we're not using any aspect of scriptural or moral values with how we operate. We're moving based upon the system that we're in and the politics that we're giving. And for a people that are trying to move beyond what the system is designed to allow them to move beyond, we cannot operate within the system, which was not designed for us to move up as a unit. Understand, I'm talking about as a unit. I'm not talking about individually, right? Uh, so there has to be some some level of understanding that we have to now move as a unit in our own way in the existence of the system. In the most and so the only way I believe that would never lead us astray is the scripture, right? So that has to be how we build our ideology. That's how we build our community rules or laws or what have you. That's how we build our policies for our future. That's how we build our policy. It should be based upon one thing. We have to be like minded in a thing. And so for me, that's my main value. And then after that is selflessness. Uh everything everybody talks about. The only way that I become a non-extractor or not an extractor only, right? But also a contributor is I have to care about the community more than myself. The only way that I communicate in a way that's effective for the people and not in the way that I want to is that I'm more concerned with you actually gathering the information rather than I am with being heard. So and so I have to continue to move myself out the way. I'm a Knicks fan. I love my New York Knicks, and everybody beating up on our star point guard because he lost out on 100 and something million, right? A lot of money to lose out on, but his mindset was the team has an opportunity right now, and we haven't had an opportunity in a long time to do. And so, in order for me to lead this team, I have to take a pay cut so other people can get paid, so we can keep this unit together, and we can achieve this goal, right? Or maybe create a dynasty. I don't know what it is, but I know that there's a vision at the end, and he took a loss in order to make that thing come. Whether you think he did smart or bad, but that to me, that is a leader. Not losing out on $113 million, but a leader is someone that is willing to take a cut so that the whole thing can work. Willing not to be the face. If I sometimes being a leader means sometimes I got to let someone else do the thing. I got to put my. I remember one time we had this NCOs. They used to always show up to these meetings at Brigade S1 with all the S1s, and everybody used to always say he need to let his E5 come because that joker he can't talk a lick. He stuttered through the whole thing and he get confused. He lost it because though he had the rank and he was the leader, but it wouldn't have hurt his capability of leading had he allowed one of his junior NCOs to go up there and speak and present his information. So you just got to be willing to take a loss sometimes as
I'm gonna start off with humility. I think every leader must begin their leadership venture through the lens of humility. It's not about you, never has been about you. It is about the people that you serve. That's for starters. So humble yourself and realize that as a leader, you actually work for the people. Um, you have to also actually learn to listen to the people. Like you have to become an empathetic listener, not a sympathetic listener. Just because you're going through a thing does not necessarily mean I'm going to show the emotions of the thing that you're going through. But I at least at a minimum need to understand what it is that you're going through to such a degree that I have compassion. Right. So humility, empathetic, listening, and then I would say last but not least, just keep your ego in check, man. If you keep your ego in check, I think everything else will work itself out. And again, promote from within. Try to elevate people within the community so that they can actually become, pillars within the community as well. One person should never lead more than five people. It's just that simple. When you have more than 5 people in the community, you need more than one leader. It's just that simple. All right, moving on to the next one, fostering economic development and sustainability. So what are the primary barriers to economic growth that many communities face today?
People's perception of the purpose of money. I think people think money is just meant to be spent. So some people want to spend money, some people want to hoard money. But when it comes to the actual looking at money as a tool, I don't think everybody understands that. And some people aren't money savvy. So when it comes to the financial literacy, people are scared of certain things. They're scared to branch out and do this. They say, no, we can't do that. And once you have that defeated mindset, you already told yourself what you couldn't do, so you won't do it. You won't even push forward to doing it. So a barrier when it comes to the economic growth is the mindset, the lack of financial responsibility, literacy, I'm sorry, and the mindset when it comes to money.
I think is the understanding of streams, right? Uh, when we talk about income streams and all that stuff, so when I talk, that's what I think about when I think about barriers of economic growth. So, and we talk about understanding. That's where my lack of understanding uh, comes in when it comes to our community. I know it's many communities, but I I don't think there's any community that hurts as much as we do concerning this. And what I mean by that is we don't have a way uh, for our finances to stream to flow within our community. Money comes in into our individual homes and they go out of our community. But if we had a sort of a pipeline that allowed it to flow within the community, then there's water for everyone, right? If you tap into the pipeline, and that's how I look at money. When you go into communities that predominantly look like us, you're not gonna find many businesses that look like us. You're gonna find many businesses that look like everybody else. And it goes back to what Uncle was saying earlier. Where do we get from an era to where we had these businesses, we had these doctors, we had these lawyers, we had our own banks, we had our own trucking companies, we had all these things, and from community to community to community, we did business with each other. And somewhere it stopped, it died, it fell, and that's the question ain't how we got there, right? That's not the question. But to me, is we forgot that the flow of once if we take all the money that comes in and push it out to where it doesn't flow back into our community, that's where the struggle comes, community wise. I might be doing all right because I got a good job, but there's a mom and pop that probably could open up a restaurant if I eat there. If I wasn't too sedity, and if I only eat in fancy restaurants, go eat at the mom and pop. Keep that money in the community, right? I know somebody like people like to say that it's racist to say that I support black businesses. No, it's not, because it's not racist for any other community when they do the same exact thing. That's how they sustain.
I'm gonna go back to my original opening thought, and I'm gonna pull the I out of there, and that's the information piece again. I think that the information is there, but I don't think that everyone really understands how to access it and what to access. It is, a gun and the bullets ain't no good if you don't know how to shoot the gun. And right now we got the gun and the bullets, but I have a lot of people that don't know how to shoot the gun. And I think there's a lot of distractions out there. I think the phone is a great tool, but it's a huge distraction. I don't know how many times I hear people talk, good, bad, or different, and you do what you do, but people that have to wing themselves and, cut certain apps off because they don't have the whatever reason to be on the app. They may not have the control. It is what it is. They don't have the control, so they know themselves well enough to say, you know what, I'm cutting the app off because I can't control myself enough to not use it. And I think that's cool, and that's accountability. But I think because if you look, this show right here, if you look, I know I looked earlier, it was like 17, 21 people or something like that. They was watching the show, right? But if Coach was to put up there a certain topic on the thumbnail, you'd have 5,000 people up in here. You know what I mean? Because it's something that's entertaining. And I think a lot of times the problem that we have, and one of the biggest barriers, is that people want to be entertained on their phones and in their life versus being educated, or versus try to learn about economic growth and things that can actually help the community. Most people own their phones for entertainment purposes. And I understand it. You worked hard all day long. You worked 8, 10, 15 hours. You don't want to sit over here and listen to 4 old dudes talk about life and put y'all on game. I get it. You know what I mean? You want to sit there and you want to scroll these social media and TikTok and stuff for hours because it's entertaining, it's relaxing, and the yada, yada, yada. So I definitely get it, but at the same time, going back to the information piece.
I like that. And to your point, it's 3 old dudes and 1 young dude. No,
I'm pretty young.
I agree. And I'm going back to Roland's statement about the mindset, but I'm going to take a different angle with the mindset. We don't know how the money game works. So because we don't know how the money game actually works, economic growth moves at the speed of our individual growth, because we believe that what we're doing is, and I'm going to use this terminology, what we're doing is called get rich over a long period of time. But yet, what we believe is that if we get in a community and we all pool our resources together, then the community will thrive. Well, no, because we're conditioned by this get rich over a long period of time. And I'm using the term rich loosely, so don't get caught up on that one word, please. But get rich over a long period of time, which is what they taught. They're like 401k, TSP, mutual funds, whatever the case may be. That is called a get rich slow plan, right? And then they teach you, will you beware of the get rich quick schemes, right? Well, scheme is just another word for plan. But we believe that the word scheme is actually bad, schematics, right? So we have this negative connotation that we tie on things that we don't understand, and we'll say it's called a get rich quick scheme, and not necessarily understand that maybe if you took the time to listen to what somebody actually saying and then come from under the umbrella of your own cynicism because you believe that everybody that looks like us is actually out to get each other, which really makes no sense. Like, we look alike, we come from the same community, but if I do something that's different than what you're doing, you think I'm trying to take advantage of you instead of trying to help you. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, you really think the people that you work with are there to help you? No, they're there to help you do the job that you signed up to do, because the job that you're doing is helping somebody else. And what is the somebody else who own that job actually doing? They're at their house, flipping the screen, pulling out that device that Garfield was talking about, and see how much money y'all made that person a day. So that's the issue. That's the direction I'm gonna go. That's one of the primary barriers when it comes down to economic growth. You don't have enough people in the community who have the knowledge of how money works in the system and how to actually put us in a position to where we can actually be in the driver's seat instead of being the recipient of the crumbs that they dish to us whenever they get ready to. All great response.
You muted, Coach.
My bad. Maybe we might be able to get 2 more here. Bring up the next question, please. Okay. How does economic development play a role in empowering communities, and what are some tangible benefits that result from economic growth at the local level?
Well, I think that economic play a role in tangible benefits would self-esteem. I think self-esteem plays a big role when you see yourself accomplishing something, doing something by the work of your hands, by the work of the people that are alongside with you. It helps push you along even further. And then it allows you to open your mind to where now I don't see Coach he's just trying to take my money. He just want to use my money so he can get rich. This is a whole pyramid scheme because I've seen it work. So now that I've seen it work, I can talk about it. I feel good about it. I not only can talk about it, I personalize it. That it is mine. I am a part of it. So that's one of the things that it will help in our community. So now I start to claim our community does this. We are walking like this. And once you personalize it and take it and make it yours, now you become a ambassador, and you bring other people in and say, hey, this is where you need to be if you're trying to do this. It's just like when that big dude with the cigars came on the stage and say, hey, if you don't want people dancing all in your videos and all this other stuff, come on over to Death Row. He was selling what he thought was the better thing, the better product. And when you have that mindset and it empowers you and your community to say, hey, I have some like-minded brothers and we're actually doing something. We're not just talking about it. You'll become one of those brothers, one of those sisters that are a doer and not just a sayer.
Economic development, like just look at if there was a business or something like that doing this economic development, jobs were being created, right? So once jobs are being created, that helps empower the community because now people have jobs, they can pay their rent, maybe they can buy a house, you know what I mean? Maybe there's a food that comes in or a nice grocery store or something that comes in. So now they have more access to foods and, you know, not necessarily any one of these food starved places and stuff like that. So I think, you know, all of these things, you know, with just a community, you know, economically being able to provide resources and being able to provide jobs sometimes can just have a layer effect where it can just keep building one thing on top of another. You know, now you have a job, you pay rent. Now you feel more comfortable. You're more lax. You know, maybe you be able to save a little bit of money or something like that. You know, so I just think that that overall helps with the overall economic growth. You know, like I said, you know, at the local level. You know, so absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a spin off of where you're at right there. And I would call it legacy building. And I'm going from a perspective of not necessarily teaching them how to get a job, but teaching them how to be a job, right? Which is something totally different. Now, when you get into the point where you're teaching them how to be on the right side of the tax system, how to be on the right side of the money game, how to actually create a safe haven within our community, because we're developing within, we're teaching them at a young age the things that they need to learn when it comes down to growing forward. They're not going to sign that piece of paper at an early age that makes them hostage for the rest of their life. And then overall, what you'll find is that somehow we will actually get a seat as an ambassador, you know, at the table for the, you know, the city or whatever the case may be, because within our community, because of what we teach and so forth and so on, it's not just our community, it spreads to other communities. And so at the end of the day, there has to be an individual in our community, there has to be an individual in another community. And then eventually what ends up happening is that through the development, through the education, through the houses and developmental projects that we're actually creating, through the people who have like literally moved themselves at a very young age to be above the median pay scale. You know, just think about it. At the age of 21, this person making $60,000, $70,000 a year, which some people, a lot of people get to that when they get in their late 40s and early 50s. So when we're creating people in our community like that, like assembly line, somebody's going to come and say, hey man, what y'all doing? Like, can you help us? Can you teach us? And then next thing you know, your name now puts you before great men. So that's kind of like where I would go with that one. Do we have one more question? I think we do. Um, Last question for tonight, gentlemen, is what are some of the key issues that divide communities such as, no, we're not gonna talk about it. Nope, we already did that already. So listen, we're just gonna dive into, because we already talked about that already. We're gonna kind of dive into final thoughts. And with final thoughts, what I'm just gonna keep it simple. Uncle, you get to go last since she was on vacation for the past 2 weeks. So Gaddy first, then we're gonna go to Roland, then we'll go to no, I'll go after Roland, then Unc, you close us out. I put it like that. So
I'm gonna say reiterate some things when it comes to my final thought, and that's we all, first of all, are leaders in our community, right? Even in our own community here online, we're all leaders in our own way. I think so. There's a difference between someone taking the lead in our direction and in our vision versus us being leaders and being examples, because we have to grow the next generation. We have to grow each other. Iron has to sharpen iron. Uh, so we have to understand, in order for us to grow, there has to be a level of selflessness in what we're doing and a level of understanding in what we're doing. And so I think we have to get to a place where we put ourselves to the side and we examine everything that is laid on the table, right? No one person's idea is great because they gave it to them, and no one person's idea is bad because they gave it to us. We have to examine everything. What man buildeth the house and does not first count the cost? Let's count the cost. What is it? How do we get there? What is the goal? And does this work for our community as a whole? So with that, we just keep our head up and keep pushing forward. I enjoyed this conversation. Love you.
I think you start by being a good neighbor, whether that's online or whether that's in your actual community. And I know I've not always been that's why I don't know these neighbors on my block, because I haven't been a good neighbor. I haven't been a person to go out and say, hey, how you doing? To not just the people next door or across the street, or if I see them, but I need to be more proactive. The same way on here, I need to be more proactive. I need to be a good neighbor. I got to use my voice. You have to use your voice. You give your time, you give your money, you whatever it is that the community needs to be given. We have to be the people that give it. We can't look on the outside and say, hey, what if we go out here and sell chicken dinners? What if we go out here and do this, that, and the other? No, because everything that we need is within the community. And also, like I said earlier, don't take it personal, but make it personal. So when I'm looking at the community, I'm looking at my family. I'm looking at how we do things, how to uplift us. It's not about me being a talking head, me being the spearhead, me. Sometimes I may have the mop bucket. Sometimes I may be speaking. But whatever is needed, I have to be there to be part of the necessity. So that's my 2 cents on the last 2 weeks. Hopefully we can get in here and get it done to where we invite people, we draw people in that are like-minded, but not just like-minded, but have a work ethic to move forward.
I believe, so first and foremost, I want to thank everybody who participated in this conversation, whether you were on the platform or whether you was in the chat. I believe that we have the ability to be an amazing community. There's no question in my mind. We go to work, we do some phenomenal things at work. We bring people together, we have meetings, we orchestrate plans, we do all kinds of things. But when it comes down to our community, we don't necessarily do that. And like I said last week, I think the foundation of the community is the family unit. So when we look at the family, for what I believe wholeheartedly, that we exist in a time where family is an option, therefore community isn't available. So we need to go back and start from the beginning. And it doesn't matter what your history taught you. It doesn't matter what your background taught you, what your experience taught you. The only thing that matters, the only time you have is right now. So, what can you do now? What lessons are you teaching now? To be a part of a thing requires us to actually do something for the thing that we claim to be a part of. No one gets in a relationship without actually serving in the relationship. We don't go into a relationship looking to be served. We go into a relationship looking to serve. Same thing with community. If you're in a community, it doesn't matter what it is. You can be in a Weight Watchers community. I don't care what it is. What are you doing for that Weight Watchers community? It is everybody's responsibility to search themselves. We can say whatever it is we want to say, But if there's nothing that I can say that I'm doing, then the words that I'm actually putting out there are hypocritical. If I'm not doing nothing myself, then what am I talking about? So that's where I want to go with this right here. Everybody search their own heart. Ask yourself, am I doing anything? And if I am doing something, what more can I do? That is always the foundational question that I will always like to start with when it comes down to being a part of something bigger than myself. And I pass it over to Garfield Martin.
I wasn't here last week, but I did learn a lot today, and I really enjoyed the conversation. The title of the show is How Community Transformation Creates Lasting Change. When I look at transformation, I remember some scripture in the Bible. I don't remember what it was, and it talked about something about being renewed by the transforming of your mind or something like that. Kind of paraphrase. I know somebody in the chat can definitely um, square me away on that. And I also look at the caterpillar and how it transforms into a butterfly. And I look at, if we want transformation or if we want change, then we have to do our little piece of the big community, the big community pie. And whatever it is you decide is your community, I believe that you are obligated to live by those rules and by that laws and that vision of said community that you're a part of. Do not be the weak link in the community. I understand about giving people chances and opportunity. I think that's a good thing. But I also understand that sometimes the people that you think are part of your community are also the people that are keeping the community down, and it's because you're automatically linking or attaching yourself to that person. So I think there's nothing wrong with disconnecting from one community and associating yourself with another community. I think that it's best if more communities engage together in conversation to learn and grow from one another. All four men up here, we all have our separate communities, and we come together each Friday and we bring certain portions of our community. Like someone said, we're from 4 different states. We have 4 different lingos and different ways that we talk. And if we can bring the best parts of our individual communities together, I think that we can come together, create something great, and then be able to disperse that and be able to take some of this information back to our own individual communities again. And we all benefit from that. So how community transformation creates lasting change. I think that continuing what we're doing right here, people just being a willing participant in the community, and if nothing else, just be a good example, be a better you. So if nothing else, like someone said, if I see you and I think that you are part of my community and you act such, I'd be more than welcome to have you as part of my community. But if you don't, I'm okay with not allowing you to be part of my community at the same time. That's my final thoughts.
Greatly appreciate that. Wise words from all brothers. And again, great conversation taking place in the chat as well. Look, listen, I've posted in YouTube the RSVP for the 17th. So make sure that you click on that join. If you're not a part of the community, by all means, click on the join and come be a part on that day. We'll welcome you with open arms and greatly appreciate having you. That being said, we're 3 minutes over time. Oh yeah, by the way, thank you for that. TikTok Sunday morning, instead of being normally it's myself or Roland or Gaddy, but the Voice of Reason is hosting on Sunday. So that being said, we'll try to make sure that we get everybody roped in. So I'll still send out my my request to everybody else once I get in the room. I'm sure the brothers are going to do the same. But yeah, if you're not doing anything Sunday, join us on TikTok. Again, we have specific spirit-led conversation. That's all we talk about. Ain't gonna be no normal TikTok, men and women or trash conversations. We don't do that. We focus our conversations on the Bible and all about how to uplift and bring our community together so that we can flourish and thrive. Listen, that being said, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Oh, yeah, by the way, the Olympics is closing out this weekend. Marathon starting at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to miss the first part of it. I'm just going to tell you the truth. So listen, y'all have a great rest of your evening. Have a fantastic weekend. Same time next week, same channel here on Empower Perspective, the Hearts of Men podcast at 8 p.m. Until then, see you next week.